It's kind of weird when you think about it, but today, people can travel wherever they want. I mean, if you have the money for it, you could be in France or Dubai in a couple of days. However, even before then, people still traveled. They migrated. Think about this. This is our ancestors who didn't have a lot of information about the world, didn't know where they were really going, and had to do all of this by foot. And they still moved. They still traveled. Hi, I'm Bear, and welcome to the Skyly Cheese Guild, where we'll be talking about ancient human migration systems. When I think about human migration, there's always one example that comes to mind, and it happens to be where a group of Africans living in ancient day Asia, but now modern day Yemen, decided to go on a trip. While the group wasn't large, it wasn't small either. It was about 100 to several thousands of them, so it was pretty significant. Using archaeology, which is the study of ancient and recent human passed-through material remains, we were able to figure out that this was a permanent trip. They permanently left Yemen. But still some questions remain. Why did they go? How did they get there? And where did they go? Well, using some of our videos like how we study history and cause and effect, we were able to find that they left Yemen due to food shortages and also the weather. However, the question remains, where did they go? Well, let's get into that. Using archaeology, we were able to figure out that these ancient African trips spanned 3 continents, multiple different terrains, and lots of land bridges. However, using their biological markers, we were able to pinpoint them to South America, specifically Argentina at Tierra del Fuego, which I tried my best to pronounce it, but if I didn't, sorry. So, when people use things like, it was this much football fields, I never can understand them, so I'm going to give you a different example. If you live in the US, imagine that you are going to California to Washington, D.C., and now do that 3.5 times without stopping. And that is basically the trip that they took from Yemen to Tierra del Fuego. But to get even more technical, I have my scroll, which kind of lists the miles of, the trip. So we see that their trip overall was 8,000, but adding things like sleeping, detours, and the fact that walking trips are never a straight route, that makes it 12,000 miles. And if we were able to divvy that up, like per day, that means that every single day you would have to walk 3 miles per hour for 8 hours. That's like a school day. Like from 7 to 2 p.m., you'd have to walk 3 miles an hour. And if you were able to do all of that without getting sick, without stopping, without hunting, without getting lost, and you knew exactly where you were going in a straight line, you could get there in 2 to 3 years. However, that was not true for ancient people. I mean, they didn't know where they were going, so obviously it took more than 2 to 3 years. Thinking, well, how did scientists even determine the ways humans traveled? I mean, that was thousands of years ago. Well, one way we see is by using anthropology, which is the study of human cultures and societies. The way that anthropologists look for these clues is by using fossils. One example of this is we see human Homo sapien remains in Israel. And after a period of time, we just see them disappear. So this tells us that they probably left because there's either food shortages or it became difficult to live in. However, there is one downside to fossils, and it's basically that sometimes we don't have the means to preserve them during the time we find them, which means that it can rapidly deteriorate when it comes to contact with air or temperature, or sometimes we're just not able to access them at all. The second way is archaeology, which is the study of human history and prehistory by using excavation sites or artifacts that are left behind. To not be confused, anthropology is the study of human remains and focus more on human remains, while archaeology focuses more on what humans left behind. One way we see this is for years we've been convinced that the Africans left Africa by this Sinai. I'm pretty sure it's Sinai Peninsula, but in the last several thousand years, people have found stone tools dating about to 100,000 years ago, which actually proves and contributed to the idea that they had another route to leave Africa called the southern route. However, there is one downside, like most things. No one was actually there, so we can't say the tools were made by the people that were there, or someone else, or something else. The third way we can look at is by studying biology, specifically Y-DNA and mitochondrial DNA, where we can kind of track the maternal side and see where mutations spring up. We can use these mutations to see where people live the longest, and we can see where people are related and where they start to kind of split off if maybe two people, like groups of people decided to split and start their own colonies or whatever. But there are some factors and downsides about this, which is essentially, since it only tracks the maternal side, we can't always grasp the full picture. The last way we'll talk about how humans are able to determine human migration patterns is languages. We see that languages are great when you're able to see when they start to split off. For example, they are able to compare similarities between two, differences in vocabulary, syntax, and overall meaning. And this basically allows them to gain a picture of what happened to the two. However, the only thing that is negative about this, like all the other methods, is that you're not always able to see when the language starts to change. What I'm trying to say is that languages don't always reflect their changing environment. We see that all these tactics allow humans to gain a better understanding about themselves and their history. But I guess it kind of brings the question, are there any theories about human migrations? And the answer to that is yes. Please stay tuned for part 2, where we'll talk about the theories about human migration. If you like this, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, comment. I'd love to hear what your favorite ancient civilization is. And stay curious. This was Bear, and I'll be back with you guys again. Bye!